And that was Marcus at Burn Recording with Bitcoin Blues, an original composition for Smaulgld. Hello and welcome to Smaulgld's People's Bank of China's Gold Reserves Update for the year 2016. People's Bank of China added 80 tons of gold to her reserves in 2016. However, for the last 2 months, the People's Bank of China has added no gold to their reserves in November or December, and we'll get to why. The total reported People's Bank of China gold reserves now stand at 1,842.6 tons, which places them fifth in the world of central banks. The gold acquisitions were halted for the second month in a row as the Chinese foreign reserves fell by another 42 billion in December. People's Bank of China foreign reserves now stand at just over 3 trillion. So they've sold off hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of reserves to protect the yuan over the past 6 months to a year. And that has accelerated in the past 3 months. And also, that's why one of the reasons China has not added, the People's Bank of China has not added gold to her reserves the last 2 months. Now, 80 tons of gold is a fair amount of gold. It places them second among central banks in gold acquisition in 2016. Number one is Russia. Russia has already added or the Central Bank of Russia has already added about 190 tons through November. We should be getting their final year-end numbers by the middle of January, and I expect that to put them over 200 tons when it's all done. The third biggest purchaser of gold among central banks was Kazakhstan. Through November, they're about 32 tons of gold added. They'll probably add another 3 or 4 tons and end up at about 34 to 35 tons of gold. But China, second place with 80 tons of gold added in 2016. And here is the chart that shows Chinese gold reserves. They first started reporting on a monthly basis back in July of 2015, where they gave their June numbers. And it was the first time they reported since 2009 when they had reported 1,054. They said they had accumulated up to 1,658 tons. And since then, they've grown their gold reserves at a steady pace, albeit slower or not at all in the past 2 months. Now, I have to repeat this every time I do this update. So many people have been indoctrinated into thinking that China is lying. These are official numbers. They're not valid, that China has more gold. And part of that's true. China does, when you use the word China, China does have more gold. And I'll show you some charts below that show there's plenty of gold in China. The key difference is it doesn't have to be, and it is not on the People's Bank of China's balance sheet. And we'll see where the rest of that gold is. When China first reported, the People's Bank of China first reported their gold reserves for the first time in 6 years, there was this outcry that, is that it? They're lying, there's more. You had all these experts talking about why China might be hiding gold, and I'm not sure they're hiding anything. they just don't have. This is the account, the foreign central bank, the outward-facing Central Bank of China. This is what they have on their balance sheet. There's no reason to keep all the country's gold on the balance sheet of the People's Bank of China. And also, they're not the only owner of gold in China, as we'll see in a few charts below. If you're interested in making a small donation, I do appreciate donations. Help keep the site running. You can do so through PayPal or through Bitcoin. And below this podcast, there's information links where you can click and make your kind donations. Thank you very much in advance if you do so, and thank you for those who have donated generous amounts in the past. Now let's get to China's foreign reserves and U.S. Treasury holdings. A good portion of China's foreign reserves are in U.S. Treasury securities, and they have been selling those off at a fair pace. And the United States Treasury Department releases a report that shows through October that the Chinese, they don't necessarily specify who, but it's accounts held by Chinese entities, we can assume most of it is the People's Bank of China, was down to $1.1 trillion dollars, which for the first time puts them below Japan. For a long time, China was the largest foreign owner of U.S. Treasury securities. It is now Japan who holds that distinction. The Chinese People's Bank of China has sold off about $140 billion worth of U.S. Treasury securities over the past year. And while they're also selling other foreign reserves, but their U.S. Treasury security position is decreasing. But as we talked about earlier, their gold reserves are not really increasing that much, especially in the past 3 months. The last quarter of the year, they only added 4 tons of gold. So right now, China's overall reserves are down to about 3 trillion. So they are decreasing their reserve assets. And I would suspect, though, once they turn around and start adding to reserves again, they probably will add, rather than replacing the treasuries they sold, they'll probably add gold at a higher percentage when they start to add back to the reserves than U.S. treasuries. That's what Russia did when Russia was selling off its treasuries and its reserves. When it finally came back to growing its reserves again, it did not grow its U.S. treasury position very much, and it really upped the gold purchases. Now, here's where we get into where there's other gold in China, and of course, now, I love when China, the People's Bank of China, doesn't add any gold to reserves. Then you can see that that doesn't mean China didn't have any gold added in the months that they didn't add gold. So there's a constant brisk business of imports through Hong Kong, which is reported, and through Shanghai, which is not reported. And as you can see, every month through Hong Kong, there are hundreds of tons of gold flow through Hong Kong each year into China. So through October, there's about 600, 700 tons of gold. Well, as we've seen, the People's Bank of China only has 80 tons added this year. Well, that shows that all the gold that flows into China doesn't go to the People's Bank of China. Another point is the Chinese country mines 450 tons of gold a year. I don't have the 2016 numbers, but they don't add, the People's Bank of China doesn't add 450 tons of gold a year. They just added 80. So you can see you've got the 700, 800 tons of gold going into Hong Kong. You got 450 tons being mined in China. And the People's Bank of China adds 80 tons. That's why I use the word People's Bank of China added 80 tons, not China added 80 tons. All this gold, this 450 tons, is somewhere in the country. It doesn't get exported. And obviously, when you get imports, that's gold that stays in the country too, for the most part, unless it gets refurbished in the form of Chinese pandas or something, gold pandas, and sent out. But for the most part, you can net add the Chinese net imports and the Chinese gold mining production as part of China's gold, not the People's Bank of China's gold. Here's another one, Shanghai Gold Exchange. Well, there's where some of the gold goes. You got withdrawals and deliveries on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It doesn't all end up at the People's Bank of China. It goes to other Chinese rich individuals, Chinese corporations, Chinese state-owned banks, Chinese investment funds. So there's places for the gold in China other than the People's Bank of China. I don't find there to be anything hidden or nefarious about it. Look, if England, the Bank of England, can be a reputable central bank and only have 300 tons of gold, why does the People's Bank of China have to add thousands of tons of gold to its reserves? The Canadian central bank has none. So China's, as we'll see now, the People's Bank of China is already the 5th largest holder according to official records. You can dispute them or not. And again, when people dispute official records, what am I supposed to put up here? Stuff that people invent? So I can only use the official numbers that are reported by the central banks. And as you can see, the People's Bank of China officially has the 5th most gold of any central bank in the world. So there's really no reason for them to have to add more gold. It doesn't really increase the value of the yuan by doing that. In fact, most of the central banks on the top 10 list that you look at here have not added any gold in the past 15, 20, 30 years. Only Russia and China are doing that. The United States hasn't added any, at least since the 1960s, and maybe not even before then. Germany, there's a lot of talk about them repatriating gold, but they're not, all they're doing is getting back gold that they already own. Same with the Netherlands, who has requested gold to be repatriated from the New York Federal Reserve, but they're not adding any. India hasn't added any. Japan hasn't added any. Switzerland sold off 60% of their gold in around the year 2000. And as we mentioned, England, Great Britain, is no longer in the top 10 because they also sold off a good portion of their gold. Even if you're interested in seeing the top 40 gold holding nations, you can click here. I'll leave a link in the blog post for you to check that out. And also, if you're interested in purchasing gold, you may do so through the Smaulgld site. We have a number of gold and silver bullion dealers where you can compare pricing and shipping. And if you do make a purchase through these dealers, Smaulgld will receive a small commission. So if you are interested in buying gold or silver, it's not a recommendation that you do. I'm not telling you the gold is running out or there's an imminent silver shortage, so get some now. But if you have made the decision to purchase gold or silver, please consider doing so through the Smaulgld site. Thank you very much. And also remember, if you're interested in helping out Smaulgld, you can donate through PayPal or Bitcoin. Thank you very much.